There's something achingly beautiful about early May in a small town. The light is gentler. The breeze seems to remember things for you. And on that particular Sunday, I arrived at my niece's birthday party with a gift carefully wrapped and a heart still stubbornly open. Emily was turning 7, bright-eyed, Lego-obsessed, and still blissfully unaware of adult silences. I brought her a Lego spaceship set she'd been eyeing for months. I stayed to help her start building it, showing her how to connect the stabilizers, where the engines went. Her laugh was all I heard, and for a moment, I let myself believe I belonged there. I lingered after the other adults filtered out. I scrubbed dishes, stacked leftover cupcakes, and listened as my sister-in-law scrolled through her phone, idly humming. Jason, my older brother, was upstairs wrangling kids, and the house felt calm. Maybe I was imagining it, but there was an air of possibility. Like maybe I hadn't been entirely written off. So when I said, "Can't wait for the big family dinner tomorrow. It'll be nice seeing everyone again," I meant it, completely, sincerely. That's when Drew, my cousin, laughed. Not politely, not lightly. He actually laughed. "Wait," he said, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "You don't know?" Something in me sank. My aunt pulled out her phone with the ease of someone showing off vacation photos. "Oh, it was yesterday. Look, here's everyone at your parents' backyard. Champagne glasses, fairy lights, dozens of smiling faces. The family dinner. Our tradition. The one I used to love." She swiped through image after image. I was in none of them, not even in the background. Just like I hadn't been invited at all. Because I hadn't. And then Jason walked in, drawing a plate, not looking at me. "Maybe take the hint next time," he muttered. It was the way he said it, not angry, not cruel, just done. Like I had failed to grasp something everyone else had silently agreed upon long ago. I stood there, the sponge still in my hand, the room suddenly too still. I placed the card I'd brought, the one with the gift card inside, on the table beside Emily's drawings. Then I walked out without another word. I cried in the car, not from the dinner, but from the clarity. It was no longer a feeling. It was a fact. I had become a distant obligation, the ghost in family photos, the extra guest no one remembered to count. I had always told myself it wasn't personal, that they simply forgot, but Jason had said it plainly. Take the hint. And I finally did. That night, sleep didn't visit me. I lay in bed, eyes open to the dark ceiling, listening to the creaks of my quiet home and the echo of Jason's words looping in my mind. Maybe take the hint next time. Not a warning, a conclusion. Memories began unraveling quiet omissions I had forgiven, forgotten invitations I had rationalized, inside jokes that felt like foreign languages. The just immediate family holiday dinners, the birthday text I never received, the group photo I was cropped out of. It wasn't one dinner, it was a pattern, a message written in lowercase dismissals. But here's the thing about being overlooked. You learn how to become unseen by choice. So I stopped giving. Quietly. They didn't know that I had helped cover roof repairs on my parents' house, or that I'd created an anonymous fund through my LLC for emergency expenses, dental work, school fees, even Jason's Etsy sidekick assistant when his wife needed a break. I'd never wanted recognition, just connection. But now, the connection was poison, and I was holding the antidote. A week after the party, my mother called me. Her voice was panicked. Their central air unit had broken down in the middle of Oregon's first summer heat wave. "Clara, did something happen with the maintenance grant? The contractor said it's inactive. Is it a mistake?" I didn't flinch. I dissolved the program. Silence. I imagined her on the other end, brows knitting, trying to solve an equation that no longer included me. "I'm sure you and everyone from the dinner can figure something out," I added gently, before ending the call. That same afternoon, I called my lawyer. We reviewed every fund, every receipt, every casual act of generosity I'd quietly written into existence over the years. And then we prepared the letters, legally binding closures, dissolutions, terminations, a signature here, an email there, and the quiet machinery I'd built for them stopped turning. At first, there was no noise. Then came the wave. Calls, messages, missed FaceTimes, a long, breathless text from Drew, "What is going on?" I didn't reply. I opened the old group chat, the one I had created 5 years earlier when Grandma passed, the one they all migrated away from once I was no longer useful. I renamed it, maybe take the hint. Then, one by one, I removed every member, without a word. And in the silence that followed, I felt something strange and powerful take root. Not revenge, but autonomy. The freedom to no longer wait to be seen. I used to love Hillside Retreat. It sat on the edge of a mountain town 2 hours from the city, nestled against a still lake that mirrored the sky too perfectly to believe. My grandparents had bought it before I was born, a place where summers tasted like burnt marshmallows, where the air was always filled with something pine-sweet and eternal. After my grandmother passed, the house was left to my mother and her sister, and when Aunt Lorraine died suddenly, her portion transferred to her son, Drew. Yes, that Drew. The one who laughed at me over birthday cake. What no one in the family ever noticed, or maybe never cared enough to ask, was that when my mother began struggling with property taxes a few years back, I quietly bought out her half. Legally, I held 50%. Drew held the other. But in everyone's mental math, Hillside still belonged to the family. They used it like a communal Airbnb with no checkout times. Holidays, long weekends, last-minute getaways. I never said no, not once. I paid for a new dock. I fixed the plumbing. I kept it insured. I, the ghost, was the one keeping the house alive. And yet, for the past 3 Memorial Day weekends, the biggest tradition in our family calendar, I hadn't been invited. Not once. I watched it unfold on Instagram, like a stranger watching someone else's memory. Barbecues, fire pits, drunken songs under string lights. My hammock, my firewood, my lock, picked. This year would be different. 3 days before Memorial Day, I had my lawyer file paperwork invoking a clause buried deep in the property's original deed. It allowed for restricted usage of shared property in cases of ownership dispute or conflict. Drew, as expected, hadn't read a single legal notice I'd sent over the past month. He was too used to me being silent. Friday morning, I arrived early. The air was misty and cool, with that high-altitude freshness that makes your lungs stretch a little wider. I unlocked the house, swept the front porch, and parked my car sideways across the narrow driveway so no one could pull in behind me. And then I waited. It didn't take long. At noon, 3 cars pulled in. My brother Jason, his wife, my mother, and Drew, complete with trunks full of coolers and sun hats, like they were starring in their own nostalgic montage. They were laughing until they saw me. Jason got out first. His expression stiffened. "You're here?" I smiled, calm. "It's Memorial Day. I thought I'd enjoy the lake." Drew walked up behind him, arms crossed. "We planned to stay the weekend. Mom was going to have the master. That's going to be a problem," I said evenly. "The house is restricted under shared ownership guidelines. You'd have known if you read your mail." They blinked. Blank confusion at first, then irritation. "Clara," Jason said, "don't make this a thing. Just because you weren't invited to one dinner, I raised my hand. It wasn't just one dinner, and it's not about that. It's about respect, something this family stopped giving me a long time ago." My mother stepped forward then. She looked tired, or maybe I was just finally seeing her without the veil of my own longing. "Clara," she said, voice quiet, "we didn't mean to hurt you. Things get busy. You know how life is." And for a second, I wanted to soften, to fold back into the pattern, to pretend they just forgot again. But I remembered. Every birthday missed, every photo I wasn't in, Every plate I scrubbed while they made jokes I wasn't invited to hear. I know exactly how it is, I said, which is why I'm here now. I handed her a copy of the agreement. This house isn't a shared vacation property anymore. If you want access, we draft a formal co-owner schedule. Shared costs, shared repairs, or we sell. You wouldn't dare, Drew snapped. This is tradition. No, I said. You already broke the tradition. I'm just doing the paperwork. That's when it began. The accusations, the pleading, the guilt-laced shouting. Jason called me selfish. Drew threatened to sue. My mother's eyes filled with tears, but her words never came, just as they hadn't all those years ago when I needed her to defend me. I didn't argue. I didn't flinch. I simply stood, steady, while they hurled every emotional wrench they could find in the old family toolbox. Eventually they left, dragging their bags, their confusion, their disbelief down the gravel road, and I remained. That night, I lit a fire in the stone pit behind the house. The embers cracked like tiny promises breaking. I poured a glass of wine and sat on the creaky porch swing my grandfather built. The stars blinked above, unfamiliar and free. I had made my point, but I wasn't done yet. There was still one thread left to cut. And when I did, everything would shift. The silence after they left wasn't just quiet, it was clean. No tires crunching up the driveway. No music bleeding from the patio speakers. No arguments over who brought the wrong brand of hot dogs. Just wind and water and me. I woke the next morning to bird song and early fog rising like steam from the lake. I made coffee, barefoot in the kitchen, and watched the shoreline blur into the trees. There was peace in that stillness, not just in nature, but in the absence of expectation. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. But I knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. So I drove into town. The small post office sat tucked between a used bookstore and a pie cafe that smelled like cinnamon and late summer. I walked in with a manila envelope already sealed and addressed to my lawyer. The clerk didn't ask what was inside, and I didn't offer. Inside was my final act, the completed sale agreement for my half of Hillside Retreat. Not to Drew, not to Jason, to a quiet couple from Bend, semi-retired, child-free, no interest in big family weekends. They'd been looking for a seasonal escape and loved the seclusion. I offered them a discounted price on one condition. They had a modest gate to mark their boundary and prevent any accidental visits from extended family. They agreed, happily. Tucked atop the sale documents was a letter, one page, handwritten, folded neatly, addressed to my entire family. I had written it over 2 nights, drafting and redrafting it like a will for a version of myself that was finally ready to die off. The version who waited, who hoped, who gave grace where none was returned. This is what it said. To those who forgot me, you may not have noticed, but over the years, I became a ghost in this family. Not because I drifted, but because I was gently, consistently pushed. With silence, with exclusions, with smiles that never quite reached me. I was the helper, the one who arrived early stayed late, the wallet, the backup plan, the background character, the emotional custodian you called when the roof leaked or tuition came due. I never asked for much, just a chair and a little kindness. Instead, I was handed indifference wrapped in tradition. I was told to take the hint, as if your silence was a language I should have learned to speak fluently. So now, I'm giving you what you've wanted all along. No more reminders, no more uncomfortable silences when I walk into a room. No more forced smiles at family dinners you never meant to include me in. I'm done. The house has been sold. The gate will go up next month. Don't worry, the new owners won't welcome unexpected visitors. And as for me, I won't be attending any more reunions, dinners, or carefully curated photo ops. I won't be answering the group chats I was never really a part of. This isn't revenge. It's release. I wish you well. But from now on, my peace comes first. Clara, 3 days after the letter was delivered, the chaos began. My phone buzzed non-stop. Jason texted, "You're seriously selling the house? Are you insane?" My mother left 4 voicemails in one day, each more strained than the last. But the message that stayed with me came from Drew. "You'll regret this." I didn't reply to any of them. There was nothing left to say. A week later, the sale closed. The new owner signed. The funds transferred. Drew tried to contest it, but his paperwork was outdated, and his payments on the property had lapsed, something he never thought I'd hold against him. But I didn't. The clause in the deed did that for me. When the legal dust settled, my inbox quieted. No more calls. No more shouting matches over property lines. They found a rental 2 towns over for the 4th of July. A bland lakefront Airbnb with plastic deck chairs and a generic fire pit. I saw it on Jason's wife's Instagram. Everyone looked fine, performing closeness, pretending nothing had changed. But I had, because for the first time in my life, I had drawn a line. I had picked myself. And in the silence that followed, I heard something new. Not guilt, not fear, just clarity. And clarity, I was beginning to realize, is its own kind of home. Autumn came quietly. The town grew softer under golden leaves, and the lake at Hillside Retreat, now someone else's lake, slipped into its mirror-still hibernation. I didn't visit it again, not out of bitterness, but because I no longer needed to. Letting go meant not haunting old rooms with new pain. In those months, I found peace in ordinary things. I hosted game nights. I painted my hallway a pale green that reminded me of wild sage. I cooked for myself, meals I didn't have to defend from critique, meals that didn't come with side dishes of guilt. My new house wasn't large, but it was warm. I picked it because it had a real fireplace and a wide porch, not unlike the one I left behind, only this one didn't echo with unspoken resentment. Work got better too. Turns out when you're no longer bleeding emotionally into every moment, your brain has room to thrive. I earned a promotion, led a project launch. I even took that trip to Kyoto I'd been putting off for years, walked through bamboo forests alone, sipping matcha on quiet balconies. No photos, no announcements, just presence. Thanksgiving arrived, and for the first time, I didn't wonder whether I'd be invited. I already knew the answer, and this year, it didn't sting. Until the knock. It came late morning. I'd just taken a pie out of the oven, more out of habit than tradition. I opened the door and stood still. It was my father. I hadn't seen him in nearly a year. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically, though time had crept into his frame, but emotionally. The broad-shouldered presence of childhood was gone. What remained was a man undone by choices he thought were invisible. He held a foil-covered dish in both hands. He didn't offer it. He didn't say why he brought it. Just looked at me with eyes rimmed red, not with fresh grief, but with slow, accumulated regret. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside without speaking. He sat at my kitchen table, resting the dish down as if it might break. Then he stared at the wood grain in silence, as though answers might rise up from the knots. "Your mother's not doing well," he said at last. I nodded. That tends to happen when control is lost. He flinched, maybe from the words, maybe from the calm. "She's sorry, Clara. She says it every day." I poured him a glass of water and sat across from him. She had years to say it to my face. He looked like he wanted to argue, but then he sighed. "You were right to walk away." "I wasn't expecting that," I told her, he continued. "That we mishandled everything. That you weren't being dramatic. That we abandoned you and assumed you'd never push back." He paused. Let the silence stretch. "I read your letter." I raised an eyebrow. "The one you sent to your lawyer." He forwarded it to me after the sale closed. I read it 3 times. His voice caught for a moment. I cried each time. I didn't know what to say. "You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for," he added. "And I'm sorry it took losing you to realize it." There was no performance in his voice, just weariness. The kind that comes when reality finally makes itself at home. I stood and opened the fridge, pulled out 2 slices of pumpkin pie, added real whipped cream, the good kind. I placed one in front of him. "No turkey," I said. "But the pie's not bad." He smiled a little, a quiet, defeated smile. And for the first time in maybe my entire adult life, we just sat. No negotiations, no explanations. Just 2 people separated by history and held together, briefly, by truth. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was something. A beginning, or at least a clean ending. A few days later, I received a letter in the mail. From my mother. Handwritten. The first read it twice. Then I folded it and placed it in a drawer. Maybe one day I'll be ready to respond. Maybe I won't. Forgiveness, I've learned, doesn't arrive on demand. It grows where it's nurtured, not where it's assumed. Weeks passed. Winter approached. The nights came sooner, but they felt lighter somehow. I hosted a solstice dinner for friends. Friends who laughed without mocking, who remembered birthdays, who passed the mashed potatoes with warmth instead of whispered judgment. Then, just before Christmas, my phone buzzed. A video message. It was Emily. "Hey, Aunt Clara." She beamed, missing her 2 front teeth. "Mom says we're not supposed to talk to you, but I miss you. I'm building another spaceship. This one has 3 engines. It's gonna be the fastest in the whole galaxy." In the background, I heard Jason's wife yell, "Emily, give me that phone." The screen went dark. I stared at it for a long time. Not with anger. Not even with pain, just softness, a bruise that didn't ache anymore, only reminded me where I'd been hurt. So I recorded a reply. "Hey, bud," I said, smiling. "That sounds amazing. 3 engines? I bet it's faster than light. I miss you too. And I'm always here, okay? No matter what anyone says." I never heard back, but that was okay, because I meant it. This story was never about revenge. Not truly. It was about ending the quiet harm, the kind that comes not in blows but in neglect, in gaslit traditions, and weaponized affection. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't storm out. I simply closed the door behind me and walked away. And maybe, just maybe, one day Emily will grow up and know it's okay to do the same, to choose peace over performance, to love without disappearing. As for me, I'm good. I bought a smaller place with creaky floors and a real porch swing. I plant herbs. I fall asleep without tension. I laugh more. And when the occasional old photo surfaces, the ones where I stood half smiling at the edge of the frame, I don't ache anymore. I simply swipe past. Not because I'm bitter, but because I finally know where the center of the story is. And it's here. With me, story 2. It was 7:30 on a quiet Tuesday morning when I opened an email that would blow my world apart. My daughter, Sophie, just over a year old, was strapped into her high chair, giggling between bites of banana. Meanwhile, I was trying to enjoy a lukewarm cup of coffee and run through my inbox before work. The subject line read, "Moving on." Innocuous enough. Until I opened it. Inside was a single line of text and a photo. My husband, Marcus, my partner for 6 years, husband for 4, had sent me an image of himself wrapped around a blonde 20-something, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. They were standing in front of our lakeside cottage, the one I'd bought, the one we'd dreamed about renovating together. "This place is mine now," the email read. "I've already moved in with Tasha. My lawyer will be in touch. Don't bother contesting. The deed's in my name." That's how he ended things, with the selfie and a smug line about property. I put the cup down before I crushed it in my hand. I wasn't shaking because I was scared. No, this was fury. Controlled, simmering, calculated fury. Marcus really thought he could send me divorce papers over email, steal the home I bought with my earnings, and expect me to just roll over? He had no idea who he was messing with. I blocked his number, replied to the email with a single line. Are you absolutely sure about that? Might want to double check the paperwork, then block that too. And I turned to Sophie with a smile, brushing a wisp of hair off her forehead like everything was normal. Because it would be. For her. I'd make damn sure of it. Backstory and breakdown: Marcus and I met 6 years ago. At the time, I was running a modest online consulting firm helping small businesses streamline logistics. Nothing flashy, but it was mine, and I was proud of what I'd built. Marcus had just started climbing the ladder at a mid-size investment firm. When we got married, I still handled the lion's share of bills. He acted like my business was a hobby. Cute, he used to call it. When it started making real money, he credited his advice for the growth. Spoiler alert. His advice usually consisted of stuff I already knew or actively ignored. The lake house had been my idea. A getaway from the city, perfect for weekends with family. I paid for it outright. Marcus insisted we put it under his name too, for tax reasons, and I stupidly agreed. But I had my lawyer draft backup documents outlining the real ownership. I wasn't naive. I was just in love. Turns out those two things aren't great together. Looking back now, the signs were there. His sudden work trips to the lake house. Long hours locked in the study, always prepping for a merger. Increasingly defensive anytime I asked questions. I was busy too. I'd given birth a year earlier. Sophie was my world, and she had my determination, even as a toddler. I saw it in how she learned to walk falling, crawling, standing again without complaint. Marcus, meanwhile, was rehearsing betrayal behind my back. A trail of lies. The unraveling started when my assistant, Brianna, sent me a link. You might want to see this, she texted. It was Tasha's Instagram, set to public. There they were, Marcus and Tasha, all over each other in a stream of photos. At the lake house, in our bed, wearing my clothes, even holding our daughter's stuffed bunny. One post was dated 8 months back, Tasha dangling a key with the caption, "New adventures with my love." 8 months ago, I was healing from a C-section and surviving on caffeine and 2-hour sleep cycles. He was playing house with a woman who barely looked 24. And then came the next blow. I checked our joint savings account, the one for Sophie's future. College fund, emergency cushion, the works. Empty. Over $90,000 had been drained. The last withdrawal happened yesterday. My heart dropped. It wasn't even a slick transfer, just a brazen dump into some unknown account. The betrayal wasn't just emotional now, it was financial. It was criminal. I made 3 calls in quick succession. First to my bank, then to my lawyer, Claire, and then to my tech guy. Because what Marcus didn't know, I'd had security cameras installed at the lake house a while back. Nothing fancy, just a few strategically placed feeds for peace of mind. They recorded everything, including him walking out of the master bedroom with artwork under his arm last weekend. Pieces I'd purchased through the company for tax reasons. Business assets. So now he was stealing from my business too. Receipts and allies. Claire came over that afternoon, legal pad in hand. I had documentation ready, the paper trail proving I paid for the lake house, the security footage, the deed addendum, the banking records, and a newly compiled folder from Brianna with screenshots from Tasha's private Facebook. Tasha had been bragging to her friends, to her followers, about how she landed a rich older guy and was going to help him squeeze his wife dry. There were even comments mocking me by name, laughing about how I was too busy running a little shop to notice what they were doing. They had no idea that little shop was now generating 7 figures a year. And Marcus, he never once bothered to learn how much I'd grown the company. He assumed he still had the upper hand. I turned to Claire. I want everything airtight, and I want him nowhere near my daughter. Claire didn't flinch. Then let's bury him. The opening shots. The next morning, I received another email, this time from Marcus's lawyers. They were filing an emergency motion to freeze my business assets. claiming Marcus had co-developed the company and was entitled to half. I laughed. Then I forwarded Claire an email Marcus had sent a year prior, ranting to a friend about how I never took his business advice and treated him like a joke. In his own words, "She's making more than me now and won't even let me touch the books. It's embarrassing." Claire smiled. "That'll work nicely." Then came the second shot. Marcus called me directly. I let it go to voicemail. The transcript read like a parody. "You're being emotional, Eva. Don't let your ego ruin this. We could co-parent. Tasha's great with kids. You've got the business. Let me keep the house. It's a fair deal." Fair? You steal my house, my savings, and then ask me to play nice? He'd underestimated me. Again, what he didn't realize was that I'd already set the board. My company had airtight contracts. The house? Legally mine with full receipts. And as for Tasha, she wasn't just some young fling. She was the CEO's niece of Marcus's firm. That's when the bigger picture came into focus. This wasn't a midlife crisis. This was a strategy. It's strange how calm you can feel when everything burns down at once. I was sitting in my office, Sophie napping upstairs, the soft hum of the baby monitor beside me, staring at a screen full of betrayal, and all I could think was, all right, let's finish this. The moment I realized Marcus's affair wasn't just personal, but strategic, that he was using his relationship with Tasha to worm his way into a CFO position, I knew this wasn't about heartbreak. This was a hostile takeover. He wanted my company gone. The lake house, the drained accounts, all smoke and mirrors, while he tried to position himself and Tasha's uncle for a major corporate merger, one that would eliminate my biggest client and hand it to their firm. He thought he was being clever, methodical. He didn't know I'd been 3 steps ahead since the moment I blocked his number. Building my case, Claire, my lawyer was already working overtime. And now that the stakes were bigger than a cheating husband and a stolen vacation home, we pulled out every file we'd been holding back. First, the financials. Every dollar I'd put into the lake house came from my business accounts. That meant any asset Marcus removed from it, artwork, electronics, even furniture, was considered theft. Business property, not marital. Second, digital logs. While he was supposedly working late on merger paperwork, he'd been poking around my network. I had IP logs, security camera timestamps, even failed login attempts flagged by our internal team. He'd tried to access my servers from the lake house. He never got through. But the attempt alone was enough to get him disqualified from just about any corporate position in finance. Then came the email trail. Claire found dozens of threads between Marcus and Tasha messages that started out flirty, but gradually revealed their plan. He was promising insider details from my business numbers, projections, vendor relationships. They even mentioned how they could pressure my clients to leave after he took control of the company. Their arrogance was laughable. The insurance policy, I wasn't done. See, I never fully trusted Marcus with money. Even before the affair, something about the way he bragged to friends about his wife's little side gig rubbed me wrong. So when I started managing his investment accounts years ago, an offer he welcomed, since he was too lazy to do it himself, I created a backup file. I called it insurance. Inside, years of questionable trades, suspicious fund transfers, and a few real red flags. Stuff I'd flagged at the time, which he brushed off. I stored it all, just in case. Now, it was case material. I handed it over to Claire with a simple line. If he wants to go to war, this is our nuke. She looked up and smiled. Watching them fall into it by Thursday, we were watching the lake house cameras again. Yes, I kept them running. And no, Marcus still didn't know they had audio. He was back at the house with Tasha and her uncle, Robert, the CEO of the firm, the man Marcus was using to bulldoze his way into that CFO role. They brought champagne. No joke. They were celebrating. To Marcus, Robert toasted. our future CFO, to making her company bleed, Tasha added, laughing, glass in hand. And then, like something out of a bad movie, Marcus chimed in, tomorrow morning, the board approves the promotion. By the afternoon, our lawyers will have access to Eva's business accounts. I leaned back in my chair, sipped my coffee, let them talk. Tasha giggled and said, she's so obsessed with that stupid lake house. She has no idea we've been draining her real assets for months. That's when I froze. What assets? I whispered to no one. Brianna, bless her, was already typing behind me. Within minutes, she found them. Offshore accounts, set up in Marcus's name, and linked to fake LLCs. Nearly $300,000 had been siphoned from our joint funds over the past year. Not just Sophie's college money. He'd been skimming our emergency savings, too. The whole I'll take the lake house routine, that was misdirection. This wasn't just betrayal. It was embezzlement. The email that broke the game. We didn't rush. That night, Claire and I drafted a single email, addressed to the full board of directors at Marcus's firm. Inside, we included video footage of Marcus and Robert openly discussing insider trading, security logs showing attempts to breach my business servers, screenshots of Tasha's Facebook posts mocking the whole plan, transfer records showing funds moved into offshore accounts. Then we attached the final piece, the insurance file. Before we hit send, I had Claire add one final note. In the interest of transparency, we're also forwarding this file to federal financial authorities. Click. Sent. The implosion. Live on camera. The next morning, I had the lake house feed open on one monitor while I fed Sophie. Robert's phone rang first. He stepped outside to take the call, pacing like a man walking into traffic. When he came back in, his face was gray. They've called an emergency board meeting, he muttered. Someone sent everything. Tasha looked confused. Marcus just stood there, blinking. Then his phone buzzed. He read for a full minute before throwing it across the room. She knew, he hissed. Ava knew. Tasha's phone lit up next this time with messages from friends, board members, even random accounts. Someone had forwarded her private posts, the ones where she gloated about how easy I was to manipulate. Her face crumpled. It was beautiful. But then came the finale. Police cars pulled up in the background. No sirens, just lights. Knocks on the door. You ever watch a man try to explain financial fraud to two officers while still holding a champagne glass? It's unforgettable. Cleaning up the mess within 24 hours. Marcus was fired. Robert, too. The board took everything seriously, especially the offshore funds and attempted corporate espionage. Tasha? She deleted her accounts, went dark online. Rumor has it she moved back in with her parents in Arizona. Apparently, the influencer brand doesn't mix well with felony investigations. The firm killed the merger entirely. My company gained 3 of their former clients by the end of the week. As for the lake house, turns out, trying to steal assets purchased with company funds voids any ownership claim. The deed is now in my name, permanently. Claire made sure of it. After the ashes, Marcus tried emailing me once after the fallout. Long, rambling apology. Something about how he got caught up in the ambition, how Tasha was a distraction, how he missed the family we built. I didn't respond. He lost his job, his reputation, his future. He can't work in finance again. Last I heard, he was bartending part-time and couch surfing. Sophie and I, we're doing just fine. I still run my business from home. We spend weekends at the lake house. There's laughter now, joy, and no lies in the walls. Sometimes I sit on the porch with a cup of tea while Sophie plays in the grass. I think about that email Marcus sent, the one that said, "I'm moving on." I smile every time. He thought he was announcing his freedom. But really? That was the day I finally got mine. They don't really warn you about what happens after revenge. You think it'll feel like fireworks, like the closing shot of a movie, but it doesn't. It feels quiet, still, like the air after a long storm, everything damp, slightly broken, but somehow clearer. In the days following Marcus's fall, I didn't celebrate. I didn't dance around my house or pop champagne. I did what any mother would do. I made Sophie her favorite lunch, folded laundry, and rebalanced the company books. Life doesn't pause just because someone else's life explodes. But inside? Yeah, inside, something in me settled. The rebuild, it took time to untangle the knots Marcus had left behind. We worked with forensic accountants to trace all the money he'd siphoned off. The offshore accounts were frozen. Legal proceedings dragged, but eventually, every cent was recovered plus interest. The courts awarded me full custody of Sophie, with Marcus granted supervised visitation. Not that he's used it. He sent a letter once, saying he needed time to figure things out. That was months ago. I'm not holding my breath. The house? I didn't change much. Just small things. New locks, new sheets. Every trace of him packed up and donated or destroyed. I left the baby blanket he never noticed in the linen closet and hung a painting Sophie made in the front hallway. It's our home now. Just ours. What they said. It didn't take long for the apologies to come in, just not from Marcus. Tasha's sister messaged me. Said she was shocked by what happened. Swore they didn't raise her to be that way. Co-workers from Marcus's firm reached out, offering support or trying to distance themselves. One even asked if I'd be open to consulting on a new project. Even Robert's assistant emailed me, apologized for staying quiet, then forwarded more internal documents that helped seal the final investigation. Funny how people find their conscience when the fire's already burning. I didn't respond to most of them. I wasn't angry. Just done. My daughter's future Sophie's too young to understand what happened. One day, she'll ask, and I'll tell her the truth. Not all the messy details, but enough. That her father made choices that hurt people. That we all get second chances, but not everyone chooses them. That her mother didn't burn the world down in anger, but protected what was hers. That love can turn, and sometimes walking away is louder than screaming. She'll know I didn't fight to win. I fought to protect. What I kept, people always ask what I did with that email, the one Marcus sent. The smug picture in front of the lake house, arms wrapped around a lie. I printed it, framed it. It hangs behind my office door, not out of spite, but as a reminder, a marker. The moment I stopped asking for respect, the moment I realized how much I'd been carrying, and how quickly I let it go. Some days, I look at it and feel a sting. Other days, I feel nothing. Most days, it just makes me smile, because I know the ending, and it isn't his, it's mine. The echo after people always talk about closure like it's a single moment, a slammed door, a verdict, a one-liner at the end of a courtroom scene. But mine came slow. It came in the sound of Sophie laughing on the dock while I made iced tea inside. It came in signing a new partnership deal with a competitor Marcus tried to sabotage one who now refers clients to me. It came in quiet mornings, soft routines, a steady paycheck, and never again having to explain why I stayed up until 2 a.m. working. It came when I finally bought the piece of land next to the lake house, turned it into a wildflower garden for Sophie. And one day, I hope she'll ask why. I'll tell her, because even after fire, things grow. The final turn, Marcus reached out one last time, this time through his sister. He wanted to meet, said he needed to apologize in person, that he was in therapy, that he finally understood the damage. I thought about it for a while. Then I wrote a simple reply. I wish you peace, but my daughter and I are doing just fine without reopening old wounds. That was the end of that. Closure isn't always a handshake. Sometimes it's knowing when not to answer the door. Who I became, I used to think of myself as careful, quiet, supportive, the one who made things work. But I've learned something in the ashes of all this. I'm not quiet. I'm not soft. I'm steady, unshakable. And when pushed, I don't scream. I build. I protect. I endure. And when someone tries to take everything I've built, I don't just survive it. I own it. The takeaway, Marcus thought sending me that email was his mic drop moment. that smiling picture with Tasha, that smug declaration about moving on. He thought it was the beginning of his new life. But what he didn't realize, it wasn't his new chapter. It was my prologue. And this life, this one I'm living now, with my daughter's laughter and a business that thrives in weekends by the water. This is the story I was always meant to write. And I'm just getting started. Story 3. It was 7:23 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday in Seattle. My 14-month-old son, Leo, was mashing banana into his pajama shirt, babbling nonsense, and squealing at his reflection on the fridge. I was halfway through my first coffee when I saw one email that turned my entire life inside out. Subject line, time for a new chapter. There was an attachment. I tapped it open. A photo. My husband, Eric, grinning ear to ear, arms around a platinum blonde woman who couldn't have been older than 24. They were standing on the porch of my vacation cabin, no, our cabin. Or at least it was supposed to be holding a welcome home sign like it was some kind of Pinterest reveal. And below that, a smug paragraph. The house is mine now. I've already moved in with Sophie. My lawyer will reach out with the divorce paperwork. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The deed's in my name. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, blinking, not crying, not panicking, just processing. Eric thought he could blindside me with a breakup memo and waltz off with the home I bought with money from my company, no less. He clearly didn't remember who he married. Or maybe he just assumed I'd crumble, cry, beg. That version of me was long gone. I took a deep breath, blocked his number, and replied to the email with one line. You might want to have your lawyer review that deed more carefully. Then I turned back to Leo and smiled. Eric had always underestimated me. I was the wife who played support role while he climbed the corporate ladder. The woman who ran a cute online shop from home while raising our kid. In reality, that shop had become a multi-million-dollar direct-to-consumer empire. And the lake house? I bought that property in full, with business profits, because I wanted Leo to grow up with somewhere peaceful to run around on weekends. Eric had wanted his name on the deed for tax reasons. I agreed, but not before my lawyer wrote up a side agreement that made the real ownership crystal clear. I'd never told him about it. I didn't think I'd need to. Turns out I did. In hindsight, the red flags had been there. I just didn't want to see them. He started working remotely from the cabin more and more, citing the need for focus on a big merger at his firm. It lined up with Leo's teething phase, so I didn't question it too hard. I was juggling late-night feedings, product launches, and trying to remember the last time I showered without a baby monitor clipped to my towel. Eric had leaned into the whole breadwinner identity, hard despite the fact that I quietly managed his investment portfolio too. The same man who once joked, "Your Etsy thing is adorable," didn't realize that Etsy thing was now on Shopify, in 6 figures of monthly sales, and incorporated under an LLC he had never bothered to Google. That morning, I called my lawyer, Melissa, and emailed her the deed documents, purchase records, and company-funded asset filings. Then I logged into the security dashboard for the lake house. Eric didn't know about the cameras. I clicked through footage going back months. There she was, Sophie wearing my sweater, lying on our couch, flipping through Leo's baby book. They'd hosted dinners. She'd painted one of the walls yellow. They even put up framed photos of them. My hands were steady now. This wasn't heartbreak. It was strategy. Right then, my assistant Ava messaged, "Jess, you need to look at this. Check Sophie's Instagram." I did. There it was. Weeks and weeks of photos, Sophie and Eric in our bed, Sophie wearing my robe, Sophie showing off my grandmother's diamond ring, the one we planned to gift Leo's future partner. The caption? "Future's looking sparkly." I wanted to throw my phone across the room, but I didn't. Instead, I opened our joint account. Gone. Every cent of Leo's college fund, $92,000 transferred out yesterday. I froze. Then I went cold. Bank, lawyer, accountant. In 1 hour, we traced the money, transferred into an account tied to a shell company Eric had created. Over the past 6 months, he'd slowly siphoned off funds from our savings and had even tried to access my business accounts, which were locked down tighter than Fort Knox. I checked my business firewall. There were multiple failed login attempts from an IP address in Surprise, the lake house. Eric had been trying to breach my client database. Ava kept digging. She found Sophie's old Facebook posts. Buried in the privacy settings were screenshots of messages. Once he gets CFO, we'll drain her dry and ghost. She's too busy being a mommy mogul to notice. Another, she really thinks she's the boss. LMAO. We'll see. Sophie had no idea that my mommy mogul business had been named one of Forbes' startups to watch, or that the next investor round was set to close at an 8-figure valuation, or that I owned every single IP right and trademark, not Eric, not anyone else. I looked at Leo again, now asleep with one foot flopped out of his blanket like a tiny king. This wasn't just a breakup. This was war. Melissa arrived that afternoon. We went through every financial record, every document, every email that proved the lake house was mine. She watched the surveillance footage in silence, taking notes. Then she looked up. We've got him. The art? Bought with business money. That's attempted theft of corporate assets. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I put it on speaker. Jessica. Thought you'd be smarter. Check your inbox. You're not the only one with lawyers. Click. Melissa and I scanned the email. His legal team had filed an emergency motion to freeze my business accounts, claiming Eric had helped build the company and deserved an audit and co-control. I laughed. The man hadn't written a single line of my product copy. The closest he'd come to a business contribution was using my Amex to buy bourbon and golf clubs. But Melissa didn't laugh. She was typing fast, pulling up an old email Eric had sent to one of his friends. Jess doesn't need me in her business. Honestly, her company's worth more than my job now. Kind of humiliating, lol. She smiled. We'll submit this with our response. Ava walked in, face pale. Jess, it's worse. She handed me a press release draft. Eric had just been promoted to CFO of his company, effective next week. And Sophie? She wasn't just some influencer he met online. She was the niece of the CEO. My mouth went dry. Melissa connected the dots instantly. He's using her as leverage, trying to secure assets before the promotion. But it didn't stop there. Ava pulled more files. Eric's company was in talks to merge with one of my biggest competitors. If Eric got control of my systems, he could leak trade secrets, kill my valuation, bury me. He wasn't just leaving me. He was trying to wipe me out. That night, I put Leo to bed and watched the lake house cameras. Eric and Sophie were there, celebrating. Champagne, laughter, a toast from her uncle, the CEO, to the new CFO, and to Sophie for helping make it all happen. I hit record. Melissa watched with me. Sophie said something that made my blood run cold. She still thinks the cabin is her biggest problem. Wait till she sees the offshore accounts. Ava's fingers flew across her keyboard. Minutes later, she found them. Eric had moved over $280,000 into overseas shell companies. This wasn't just about infidelity. This was white-collar crime. I looked at Leo, curled up with his favorite stuffed llama. My whole world. Then back at the screen. Eric thought he was playing chess. I'd built the board. Melissa turned to me. Want to end this? I nodded. Let's go. Melissa didn't waste a second. While Ava compiled everything emails, financial records, screenshots from Sophie's socials, I got to work drafting a detailed timeline. I wanted the entire betrayal laid out, step by step. This wasn't just personal. It was calculated, strategic. I needed to show that, not just to the court, to everyone. While we built the file, Ava flagged another issue. He's still trying to get into your servers. Eric was using the Wi-Fi at the lake house, attempting to brute force entry into my company's back-end portal. But he didn't know we'd created a decoy login, a fake dashboard that looked legit. Every move he made inside it was being recorded. Let him think he was winning. Melissa drafted a package for the board of Eric's company.